Welcome to the OMD TV and podcast show, the place to be to grow and scale your practice. Now, through our TV show, we like to provide our viewers with success stories in the industry and tips and strategies that they can use to help grow and scale their practice.
And today we have a couple of special guests on our show, Mr. Brent Goddard Lance Penn, and the owner and managing director of ModPod Sports Podiatry, Sydney leading podiatry clinic. And today we could talk about a very interesting topic, how ModPod finds successes through the pandemic. And this is part of our special COVID success story series, where OMD TV will feature interviews with clinics that have successfully pivoted and thrive through the challenges time like the COVID-19 is happening right now. So let's get started.
Yeah, welcome back to the show, Brent and Lance.
Thanks for having us.
I know that our audience quite enjoyed your last episode of our podcast, number 21, which was the simple techniques to acquire new patients. Now we're excited to have you back on the show again, as we can't wait to discuss your personal journey through the coronavirus experience, the pandemic over the last 12 months.
Sweat and tears. Sweat and tears.
What an enjoyable time it was for everyone. So I guess though first, for our audience that's learning about you for the first time, can you just tell us a little bit more about yourselves and your practice?
There we go. I guess we set the business up probably 15 years ago, and Lance had started it with one clinic in the city. I came on board with him, and then we ventured out and got our second clinic in Mosman. And then we're sort of progressively growing from there. We've tried a few different things along the way that may haven't worked, but mainly it's worked, and we've increased our clinic size. So we now have sort of 5 core clinics in Sydney and a couple of satellites up on the Central Coast. So we've got a great team of staff members. I'm no longer consulting in podiatry, so I sort of have a wide lens view of the business.
Sure.
Lance is
I tend to be more the face-to-face of the business. I like to think of myself as the ideas man,
Okay, right.
which Brent tends to filter and shoot down most of the time.
Right, right.
But that's
You're the bad ideas.
I'm the bad ideas man, apparently so.
a few gems in there.
Few gems, and you got to filter through them. But yeah, we really enjoy the business, and we enjoy servicing people and providing the best treatment for them. But more importantly, we just like challenging what's happening at the moment and trying to find a better way of doing things.
Sure.
And we just love growing. We hate being in the same place for too long. I get bored.
Sure, fair enough. Well, 15 years in the industry, I mean, you must be doing something, right?
So
That's a long time for any practice, but for not just one practice, but you're now running multiple practices.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually looked the other day to see how long I've been practicing podiatry full term, and I think I'm coming on nearly 26 years.
Right.
So I started off and opened up my first clinic when I was 21.
Right. So we missed the silver anniversary.
Yeah.
And
So-
you just told our audience your age.
But they call it practice because you've got to keep on practicing and trying things before you find out what works and what doesn't.
Sure, fair enough. Now, I mean, we're here to talk about sort of the pandemic and sort of your experiences through the pandemic. And so I guess first off, we'd like to know just a little bit more about what ModPod's response was to the coronavirus and the various lockdowns that you had to do.
So before we got over the shock and horror part,
I think the initial phase was just a freak out, wasn't it?
yeah, it was very surreal.
Yeah. I think overall we probably took a pretty rational view, didn't we? We were actually quite clinical about it. They looked at the different scenarios. When it first started, no one knew what was going to happen, right? We didn't know there was going to be any government support. So I ran a few spreadsheets and thought, what's our worst case scenario? How do we batten down the hatches? And then I guess we had that plan in place, and from the early days, we then talked to all of our staff members, and we didn't want to tell them what the worst case scenario is, but we sort of reassured them that we were going to do the best to keep the business going, and that was the priority.
But the interesting thing about it was the calmest and most relaxed that we've ever been in private practice. We're good in a crisis, and because when you're doing everything you can, everything's in your control, and things don't work out, then you always go, okay, well, what have we done wrong? What can we improve on? This was something that was completely out of our control. So I took all that angst away, and all you could do was do your best, nothing more. It had nothing to do with you.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was really calming and brought us to action.
And so when you were making those plans, I mean, we were hearing about coronavirus and starting to ask questions sort of in early January. It wasn't until sort of more mid to late March that sort of the real sort of heavy sort of lockdowns and challenges where we went. How early into that were you making these plans or investigating these issues?
Oh, within
Pretty
weeks.
early.
Straight
It
away.
was, we were started talking obviously in Jan, Feb, but we're like, no, it's not
Lucas
going to
going-
do anything, right?
Lucas looking on worldwide, we better just start gaining awareness in case he comes here.
Yeah, and then it kind of ramped up, and I think once the lockdown started to roll through, we really structured it out and like how that's going to look. We split our businesses into different teams as well, so making sure that if one clinic went down, if someone got infected, that it wouldn't shut down the whole business. So we kind of had to look at strategies.
And it's also great having Brent working the numbers and working out different case scenarios.
Yeah.
And doing that with the confidence knowing, okay, this is the worst that can happen. And there we go, we worked out defaults for them and what we had to do to keep our heads above water.
Right.
But always had a exit plan or a game plan.
Sure. Good. And then, like, how did it sort of continue on from there? I mean, you had these plans, you didn't know about support, you didn't know sort of what was going to come next. You didn't hit, or did you ever hit your worst case scenario?
No, I mean, the government, all of the JobKeeper stuff really helped us, you know, because we needed that because our revenue went down below, I think it was 40%, we were way beyond that threshold.
Right.
Because we had to effectively, you know, people stopped going out, stopped getting treatments.
Yep.
And just the core people probably, I don't know, you'd have more of an idea being on the street. The people who needed those treatments were still coming in. But, you know.
So we always had a bit of core turnover. And we knew we'd have support to a certain stage until the government came in again and reevaluated if we were going to make the next step. But what we did during that period was we managed to get a bit of cash flow going because we were able to put a lot of loans on hold. And so we, instead of not using the money, we still put it aside. So we knew, okay, we had a bit of a cushion to get us through worst case scenario. And in fact, when it came to the second round of, I wouldn't say government funding assistance, but we missed it by 3%.
Oh, right.
3%.
Right.
So we were still bleeding, missed it by 3%.
Yeah, just not quite enough.
And that, I must say, I found it quite hard. It was just so close, we really needed it.
Yeah.
But we had the backfall of going on a little bit of cushion that we put aside to get us through, and you managed to squeeze it through.
Yeah, and I think the banks were great, and that was really awesome. Getting support from, you know, people where we have debt, and they were just very willing to, you know, we didn't get anything free, they just put everything on hold for us. But the fact that they were supporting us, I think that was awesome, whether that was push from the government as well.
But also our team was fantastic. I mean, we had our receptionists and our podiatrists sort of come up to us and say, you know what, I'm just going to take a couple of days off, you're not paying us. And everyone and they came to us and we all just did it together as a team.
Yeah, yeah, it was awesome.
So it wasn't just ourselves, our team got us through.
And I think in a way it brings everyone closer, right? So when you have those crisis moments, everyone came together and kind of feel more like a family now. So
Yeah, it's always very interesting. You never really know how to plan for a moment like that. And so it's always interesting to see how people do react in those situations. And seemingly quite positive.
yeah,
I think you just got to work out scenarios. And if you dress the scenarios before it happens, then it's not a shock. But you've got to work the numbers at all stages.
Wow, that's a very interesting point. Now, when it comes to some strategic decision, I know pivoting a business is a daunting task, right? Like, especially like speed or reaction time is actually quite critical when it comes to times like this. And you don't have time, and you have no time for a long decision making process, and you have to have really fast reactions. So especially when changes are coming at your way rapidly. So how did you make some strategic moves fast? And how fast was that? And how much of the time did it take you to make these happen?
I mean, the interesting thing with strategy and with reaction and time, how fast you do something is, it's a reference point, it's different to everyone.
Yeah.
Where our partnership partnership works really well. I react very quickly, and within a couple of hours, I'll be calling Brent and going, okay, this and this is happening, well, let's do this and that. And Brent will slow it down to a few days. We'll start asking questions to key people in industries, speaking to people on the street, gathering information. And once we've gathered enough information to get an idea of where things were going, then we'd make an educated decision, take the risk, and go for it. But it's based on probably me being more actually Brent slowing me down and collecting the figures and numbers again.
Wow.
Yeah, we're polar opposites as far as our approach to business, which is good. I think we balance each other. Yeah, that's right.
But you've got to be agile and nimble, but you can't spend too much time on a decision. You have to do the math, and then you have to just make a decision, back yourself and go for it. Rather do something and fail than do nothing at all.
Yeah,
that's been our philosophy.
Lance has probably got a very good intuitive gut sense of how things go, and so you could see our city practice was going to suffer, and you picked up that that's not going to recover anytime soon because you could just see how everything was going with people working from home, and we could see that some of our suburb clinics were doing really well. They actually increased because people were in the suburbs, right?
Yeah.
So that was our pivot moment, is like, we actually need to get another suburb clinic, and we need to take resources or out of the city clinic and put those elsewhere.
But also one of the changes that we did make that actually got us a fair amount of business to help us through is one of the things that we all noticed was there was a decline in the amount of people that would go to simple nail bars to get pedicures done. So we started offering, as a lot of clinics did, but we were probably a bit more aggressive and forward with it. We would advertise a Medi-Pedi, which is just a general treatment based on a pedicure treatment.
Right.
And people that didn't feel safe going to normal nail bars felt comfortable coming into clinics, and we actually got a big following doing that through COVID. Right. And that was just something that we really introduced and flew with through COVID.
And you've maintained that?
We've maintained it, but the demand has dropped off because the trust for nail bars has gone back. But it served its purpose over that time.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Well, I still remember setting up a campaign for you guys.
Yes.
Quick setup. Yeah.
And I was also talking to you through that time, and the one thing you said is don't stop advertising. Right?
Yeah, that's something we highly recommend you guys. And you probably remember my email is that when the things changes, that especially your toughest or the strongest competitor, they don't stop advertising, and you can see that ModPod Sports Podiatry is such a aggressive or advanced when it comes to marketing, and they didn't stop and haven't stopped, and they probably won't stop.
You can't take your finger off the pulse because there's always a lag between when you market and the results you get from it. So to market when times are good is a waste of time. You've got to market more when times are bad.
Yeah.
And consistency.
Yeah,
that's what you taught us.
Yeah, it's all about consistency. I tell you, when it comes to marketing game, and I've been telling the key success, full factor of any business is their persistency. And talking about one of my favorite quotes from Charles Darwin: "It's not the strongest or the most intelligent species that survive. Is actually the one that's most adaptable to change," right? And we see repeatedly from our own experience, that's a key factor, is that lots of businesses fail because they fail to adapt to changes when the market is changing. So how do you keep yourself nimble and flexible for the last 12 months, and also the strategy to move, in the future? How do you keep yourself, flexible?
I mean, I'll leave Brent lead on to the first part of this. The reason why we are nimble and why we make decisions, it's based on the constant auditing of stats and figures that you'll do with your assistants.
Yeah.
Making sure that at any given moment you know where you are in space and time in terms of what's happening with the business and what's happening with the environment. And without having Brent working on that permanently, we wouldn't have such an accurate sense of where we are in real time or where the business is and the environment.
I think it's definitely that, but it's also probably part of our personality as well as business owners, is that we're constantly looking for that change.
Looking for opportunity.
We like change, I think. And so naturally it comes easy to us. We don't like the status quo doing the same things. So I think, it's probably those things rolled together, isn't it? I think most business owners probably are more adaptable. I don't think the fact that I've set up a business to start with takes risk, right? But you have to keep changing and moving, otherwise, like you said,
I think you get bored, and it's a part of what you do is we enjoy it and having fun. And if you're going to be doing the same things in the same place forever, rather take it fun now.
I think you bring up some valuable sort of ideas there that you need to embrace change. I think, especially if you're going to sort of, if you envision having something for the long term, things will change. Your environment will change. How you market will change. How big your environment, your competition changes. You will have to inevitably change if you want to have a practice or any business that sustains itself for the long term.
And the key thing is also not to overthink things.
Yeah.
You've got to be pretty strategic and time-wise when you make a decision and follow through. And then if it's the right decision, things will fall into place. But you won't get there if you don't make that quick decision and take the chance.
I think that comes back to your gut feel.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, when we looked at opening up this clinic, I just knew inherently that the city was going to take a while to get going, and we knew that the suburban clinics were doing well. So it was a decision on, okay, where do we go next? So then I made up a list. I wrote down some key criteria in terms of where my ideal practice would be, and then a wish list. And I kind of was at that stage. I was just a bit tired with the stress of COVID and what was happening in the city, and I needed to take a week off practice.
Yeah.
And I took a week off, and day one was great. Day two, I was bored as hell. Day two, I thought, okay, well, Rose Bay fell on my list of places I'd like to open up a clinic, and I came and I walked along the street and I saw the spot open. I thought, oh, okay, this is actually criteria too. It's location, location, location.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, I'll just give the guys a call and see what comes out of it. And before I knew it, someone was giving me a call, and next moment we were negotiating, and by the end of holiday week, day 4, I signed the lease.
So by the end of the 7th day, you got a deal.
I signed the lease.
Like Queen says, it's all about speed and making quick decisions.
Wow, I'm very impressed because we talk about opening up like a Rose Bay clinic and see how fast it was happening. You guys got all the fit out done literally like within a month, wasn't it? Like
it took we had engaged somebody to do the works within a few weeks, but it took a couple of months to actually do the build to the specs and around what we needed.
Wow, so fast.
We started, it was October started, we moved in here December.
Right.
Yeah, and we actually prepare a Google Ads campaign to prepare the whole launch of the new location.
Correct.
Actually is helped as well, and now you ranking really well on the Google Maps as well, like for Podiatrist Rose Bay. So that's really quick setup.
Well, because of obviously working hand in hand with you, we were able to hit the ground running. And again, it wasn't just what we did, it was working hand in hand with you and setting us up.
Yeah.
Sure. So, I mean, 12 months went by somewhat quickly, somewhat slowly. And, you know, how has the business now changed, and where are you today with the business, and sort of, you know, where were you sort of 12 months ago when things were great and possibly a little worried about maybe what could come? Where are you now, and how do you feel about it?
So it's pretty interesting that because pre-COVID that January, we were starting to really take off, and we had a lot of new incentives that we're going to introduce to the business. And COVID actually stopped all of that. And reevaluating now, those things that we're going to introduce are not relevant anymore.
Right.
So now we're readapting to the change, and we're going to start reintroducing things that are more relevant what's occurring at the time.
Even though we set up a new business, we've sort of been on a holding pattern and just kind of surviving to a degree with the staff as well. And we haven't actually done a huge amount of forward planning, but I've come over from New Zealand, and that's where we're now planning out our next 24 months.
Right.
Whereas all the other stuff, like I said, is probably a little bit irrelevant because things have changed, you know.
Sure.
Starting with the new thoughts and new ideas, times have changed, and they're never going to go back to the way they were before.
No,
and it's just as soon as everyone accepts it and adapts to it, the better and easier it'll be.
Yeah, fair enough. A few sort of marketing ideas to discuss. I mean, you've got a lot of competition in the sector, and obviously we've been impacted during coronavirus. What is your sort of value proposition that kind of puts you ahead of your competitors? At least how what do you feel like?
Oh, we've got Lance to start.
You know, exactly.
That's all we need, is it?
That's all you need. Is Lance.
So great.
I think we've got a multiple. I think we've even though within our business we do kind of the whole thing of podiatry, we've got quite a few specialties within that. So we do a special treatment for plantar warts, for example, fungal nails, and then we've sort of got a whole sports podiatry arm, and then looking into like a sort of a rehab model as well.
Right.
So I think we offer all of the service, but a wide range of services, and trying to kind of have a solution for most people's problems within that, but also then having a great referral network when we don't have those solutions. So.
I mean, that's the technical side of things, and always when you look at what else is happening with the competition, we don't really look at what everyone else is doing. We try to run our own race. But I think there are two really strong points to our business, and the one is the technical side that we bring in from what treatments we're doing and how we do it from processes and systems, but then there's also the people's person. And I honestly believe that if you just treat people right and you go out of your way to help them and you just do good work and you're friendly and it comes from a good place, it's just going to organically grow. I mean, how can you go wrong from that? Just stick to the basics, just be nice to people, do good work and have fun.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. So 2 years ago, when we first interviewed you in our special postcard number 21 about some techniques to draw new patients in, obviously things have been changing a lot, right, for the last 12 months. So now, what are the techniques, the marketing techniques that you've been using quite effectively to draw people in with a new condition like this?
Yeah, I think again, taking advice from you guys, we're doing the, obviously all of the AdWords, but the quizzes, I think, I'm not sure we're doing quiz.
Yeah, the quiz, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just about to launch into the webinar, so I've done the course.
Thank you.
And I'm halfway through my first webinar, so...
So it'll take 3 months.
You're convinced me that, I think there's going to be another good thing, right?
Stealing the pace from that one.
Yeah. So I guess the question there, that's to the general market. We're also now wondering whether we can do that to our Medico network, which have been cut off with COVID.
We've got to have to find a new digital way of networking to our referral network.
Yeah, because doctors aren't really taking appointments to see other practitioners. Right. So we need to still communicate with them, and that's sort of where we're scratching our head a little bit at the moment. That's
we're not scratching. You guys are developing a place. We're giving you the problem, and you're going to come up with the solution.
Exactly. So that's probably where we're at, but we're also going out for lunch with you after this, and we're going to discuss some more ideas.
I think a webinar is a great way for keeping contact with your referring doctors, because now you can't see them anymore, and you need to still keep in touch with them. And that's a good way for them to gain some educational value from content from you as well. And that's the best way to go now with the webinar content. And we're not just doing that for referring doctors, we're also doing that for patients as well.
But it's so important, because I think on the referral network, we've noticed pre-COVID, when you could have face-to-face meetings with GPs, we would know that it would take X amount of time to start getting referrals and build it up. You'd have to visit somebody about 6 or 7 times before they would be in the headspace to start referring to you. Now, one thing I've noticed with Rose Bay, the fact that I haven't been able to get face-to-face, I get very few GP referrals. So we really need to be innovative with how we can get those touches across without face-to-face meetings, because it definitely plays a massive role.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Steve, do you have no questions?
I do. You've provided a lot of great information here. Do you have any other sort of hidden pearls of wisdom and advice for those that may be wondering how to sort of handle similar kind of conditions in the future, situations of unforeseeable nature that we can't control?
That positive. Cliche as that sounds, but
I think you've got to build a robust business. Not put all your eggs into one basket. Some things will always fail regardless of times. And you've got to surround yourself with key people.
Right.
So key relationships and having that robust structure, I think, is something.
So how often do you communicate the vision with your team?
We typically go away, we're communicating all the time, but we do one annual trip a year where we take them away.
These are the two you just mentioned.
And that's sort of we call it an alignment weekend. So we actually make sure we're, looking at our core values our strategy, our vision.
Plan for next year.
What have we done? So we look backwards. So what have we done in the last 12 months?
Did we achieve our goals that we set out to do in the last 12 months?
And then what our next 12-month goals are. So, and then we try and kind of bring them into that decision making as well. So,
Okay. Sounds really good.
It's just having a clear vision.
Yeah,
With
exactly.
everyone that you're all on board, working towards the same common goals, creating community.
Yeah.
Brent, Lance, thank you very much for joining us today on the OMD TV show. I know that our viewers will appreciate the insights that you've provided today, and congratulations, really, in a lot of ways.
You survived.
No, it's not finished. We're waiting. It's work in progress.
And I guess, isn't that really the lesson, that it is
Work in
something
progress.
it's always a work in progress, and we need to be adaptable and changing and meeting the conditions.
Take risks.
So, great. Well,
Thanks very much.
Thanks for joining us, and I hope that you enjoyed today's OMD TV show. Thanks to Brent and Lance for joining us on the show. If you have any questions or feedback on the show, we'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to be on the OMD TV show, we'd also love to hear from you as well. Now, if you want to learn more about how to drive more of your ideal patients into your sales funnel using targeted messages and hooks, I suggest that you attend our webinar called The 3 Must-Use Strategies to Generate More New Patients and Referrals on Autopilot. Spending 1 quick hour with us in that webinar will help you master the fine art of driving more traffic to your clinic and ensure that you are successfully generating all the business traffic that you can, instead of just hoping that they'll show up simply because you built it. I'll leave the link to the webinar in the show notes below so you can have a chance to sign up for it then. Thank you very much for coming. We look forward to seeing you at the next show.
Bye for now.